The Epstein Files. Paradox. At.we. 5 million pages created more conspiracy theories than answers. On January 30th, 2026, the Department of Justice did something unprecedented. They released over 3 million pages of documents, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images related to Jeffrey Epstein. 3.5 million pages, inches total. The largest document dump inches, American criminal history. And somehow, it only made things worse. You would think that transparency would end conspiracy theories, that sunlight would be the best disinfectant. But what happens when the sunlight itself becomes suspect? What happens when the very act of revelation creates new shadows? Tonight we're going to examine how the biggest transparency effort, Inch's modern history, accomplished the opposite of its intended goal. How 3.5 million pages didn't close the book on Jeffrey Epstein. They opened 100 new ones. The promise of transparency. The Epstein Files. Transparency Act was supposed to be different. After years of sealed documents, redacted court filings, and classified evidence, Congress mandated full disclosure. The American public would finally see everything. But even before the release, there were warning signs. Representative Khanna, who had been one of the loudest voices demanding transparency, immediately expressed skepticism. According to his public statements, the Justice Department had identified over 6 million potentially responsive pages, yet only 3.5 million were released. That's nearly half the documents simply missing, and the DOJ offered no explanation for the gap, no accounting for where those additional 2.5 million pages went, or why they weren't included. This wasn't transparency. This was selective transparency. And inches. The world of conspiracy theories, selective transparency is worse than no transparency at all. The contamination problem, but the missing pages weren't even the biggest problem. The Department of Justice itself issued a remarkable admission alongside the release. They stated that the production, and I'm quoting directly, may include fake or falsely submitted images, documents or videos, as everything that was sent to the FBI by the public was included. Think about that for a moment. 3.5 million pages of evidence, and the government itself is telling you that some of it might be fabricated, that hoaxes, forgeries, and deliberately planted disinformation were included without any attempt to verify authenticity. For legitimate investigators, this created a nightmare. How do you cite a document as evidence when the government has preemptively told you it might be fake? How do you debunk a conspiracy theory when the conspiracy theorist can point to actual government documents, even if those documents were submitted by random members of the public? The DOJ had essentially poisoned their own well, and they did so knowingly. The political theater. Before the files were even released, they had already destroyed at least one political career. Georgia Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene had been one of the most aggressive voices demanding full disclosure of the Epstein files. She lobbied publicly and repeatedly for their release. And according to NPR reporting, this lobbying put her in direct conflict with former President Donald Trump. On January 5th, 2026, just weeks before the release, Greene resigned from the House of Representatives. NPR reported that Trump had repeatedly attacked her over her efforts to release the files. The implications were explosive. Why would any president, from any party, oppose the release of documents about a convicted sex trafficker? What could possibly be inches, those files, that would make political allies into enemies? The resignation created exactly the kind of speculation, the transparency, was supposed to prevent. The name game. When the files were finally released, analysts began counting, and one number stood out immediately. Donald Trump's name appeared over 3,000 times inches the released documents, 3,000 mentions, inches files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, context matters. Many of those mentions were likely procedural. Flight records, party guest lists, business transactions that may have been entirely innocent. Trump himself argued publicly that the release absolves him of any wrongdoing. But here's the paradox. Trump opposed the release. His opposition led to the resignation of a political ally. And now his name appears 3,000 times inches. Documents he didn't want released. For conspiracy theorists, this wasn't evidence of innocence. It was evidence of a cover-up that failed. The opposing narratives. The files didn't just fail to resolve conspiracy theories. They created a perfect environment for opposing conspiracy theories to thrive simultaneously. Hillary Clinton, inches an interview with the BBC, claimed there is, and I'm quoting, a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration, inches what she called a slow, heavily redacted release of files. Meanwhile, Trump supporters pointed to the same files as evidence that their political enemies were hiding far worse. Both sides could cite the same document dump. Both sides could point to the same redactions, the same missing pages, the same contaminated evidence. The files became a political Rorschach test. Everyone saw exactly what they expected to see. CNN analysis noted that the release had spawned more conspiracy theories than it resolved, with accusations flying inches every direction. Trump, Clinton, the CIA, intelligence agencies, both political parties. The paradox revealed. This is the paradox at the heart of the Epstein files release. Secrecy breeds conspiracy theories. Everyone understands that. When information is hidden, people assume the worst. But it turns out that transparency, partial transparency, contaminated transparency, politically charged transparency, can breed even more conspiracy theories than secrecy ever did. When you release 3.5 million pages, but admit 6 million existed, you create questions about what was withheld. When you include unverified public submissions alongside actual evidence, you make everything suspect. When political figures resign over the release while others claim absolution, you transform documents into weapons. The Epstein files didn't reveal the truth. They revealed that inches, our current environment, truth itself, has become impossible to establish. The deeper question, perhaps that was always the point. 3.5 million pages is not a document release. It's a burial. It would take a team of researchers years to properly analyze that volume of material. By the time any meaningful conclusions could be drawn, the news cycle will have moved on. The political utility will have expired. Meanwhile, anyone can cherry-pick individual pages to support whatever narrative they prefer. The sheer volume makes verification impossible and contradiction inevitable. Representative Khanna asked where the missing pages went. Hillary Clinton claims a cover-up continues. Trump claims exoneration. Greene lost her career fighting for this release. And Jeffrey Epstein, the man at the center of it all, he remains as mysterious Inch's death as he was Inch's life, surrounded by evidence, shrouded Inch's suspicion, and protected not by secrecy, but by an avalanche of information too vast to comprehend. 3.5 million pages, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images, and we still don't have answers. Perhaps the real conspiracy isn't what inches the files. Perhaps it's the files themselves. A perfect system for maintaining mystery while claiming transparency, for burying truth under the weight of information. The Epstein files taught us something important about the modern age. Sometimes, the best way to hide something isn't to lock it away. It's to release so much that no one can find it. The truth is out there. Somewhere inches those 3.5 million pages. Good luck finding it.